Hi, I'm Nicky.
And I'm Nicole.
We are currently standing on a street in Glasgow,
About to take you on our journey to meet the former First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon.
Join us as Nicola reflects on her journey in the year of the 25th anniversary of the Scottish Parliament.
We want to find out who is the real woman behind the persona and where does all that drive, ambition and resilience come from.
Let's go inside and find out. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
You're welcome.
How do you think politics has changed in the last 25 years?
I think politics, not just in Scotland or the UK, but globally has changed. The way we communicate, social media has transformed political discourse, not for the better, in my view. I think politics is much more polarised, more toxic. We seem to have managed collectively to obliterate the sort of common ground of fact and acceptance of fact and, you know, the sort of common ground of whatever our disagreements, the sort of shared values that nevertheless bring us together. And I think that has led to a situation where democracy is more fragile. Every now and again, there is a need to really battle for the things that matter. So maybe that's what we face over the next 25 years, but it will depend on everybody who cares about that actually being prepared to step up and ensure that it happens.
Where do you think your drive and ambition and passion and resilience came from?
I mean, it's a big enigma in me. You know, I'm a kind of shy introvert, and people look at my public role and say, how can that possibly be? I think people would be surprised at how many people in high-profile roles are shy introverts, and that can be and has been for me in my life and in my career a handicap at times. But I came to the conclusion a few years ago it's also been kind of my secret superpower because I have to and always have had to push myself so hard, and I've always had this self-doubt that comes from being the shy introvert, you know, this kind of old imposter syndrome. It's the kind of thing I would say to anybody who thinks, oh, I'm shy, I can't possibly do certain things. Well, don't assume that. Just channel it and try to turn it from what would be perceived of as a weakness into something that actually is a strength.
So have you experienced any toxic masculinity, not as a politician, as a woman?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think what often is quite difficult about that question is that is so ingrained and so embedded in the everyday life of practically every woman alive that when you're asked to single out examples of it, you can't do it because it's just there, and so you're not conscious of it. It's just something you accept. Women are treated differently. You're perceived differently. You know, how you look matters much more than it does for a man. The tone of your voice. You know, you end up in a position where you're either too feminine or not feminine enough, and so it just takes so many forms. And is that changing for the better? I don't know. Sometimes I think it is, sometimes I think it's not. And I think, like many sort of strands of progress that we've seen over my time in politics, for women, for, you know, ethnic minorities, for LGBT people, I think we're seeing a lot of pushback now against that. I think women's rights are under much more stress now than at any time in my life. I think we're just being reminded that progress is never... It's never sort of absolutely guaranteed that it will keep going in one direction. You've got to keep, you know, winning the same battles over and over and over again, and that's a bit depressing. But it's also, you know, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Yeah. What do you do when you change career? How does that transition for you?
You know, lots of people go through career changes kind of midlife, and I'm not trying to downplay the difficulty of that, but you're First Minister, it's like everybody's watching you, and so there's more of a challenge, I guess. You know, I'm going to be in Parliament for another year and a bit. I'm writing a book, I'm starting to do things that matter to me, that I enjoy doing. Frankly, you know, I've spent quite a lot of time just doing all the things that I never got the chance to do. Spending time with friends and, you know, having a laugh and just living a bit. I've probably lived more. I mean, it sounds bizarre because being First Minister, you know, you do lots of living, you travel the world, you know, deal with big things, meet lots of interesting people. But in terms of just living as a human being, I've probably done more of that since I stood down than I'd done in the previous 20 years almost. So that's been good fun.
You said that you used to skate, and do you still do that?
I don't. I've skated probably about twice in the last, 20 years. Both on camera, which was terrifying. But I used to skate when I was a kid. I started figure skating when I was really young. I wasn't ever very good at it. I mean, I wasn't terrible. But then when I grew up, there was a big leisure centre that had an ice rink in it, and they used to on Saturday nights have an ice disco, which is where I spent much of my teenage years skating around to 80s music. I loved ice skating, so it's maybe now that I've got more time on my hands, it's something I can take up again.
Is there anyone you've ever wanted to interview or do want to interview now?
Loads. I love interviewing people. I mean, it's partly that's just the role reversal, it's the turning of the tables. I'm so used to being interviewed. I'd love to interview Hillary Clinton. I've met Hillary, spent a bit of time with Hillary, but I'd love to actually sit down and interview her.
Right.
Whether that we'll ever get the chance to do that, I don't know.
Right, I hope you do. And the one question I thought of, is there a question you've never been asked that you've always wanted to answer?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. I'm not going to be able to think of the answer
just like that,
now.
just right now.
I sometimes think I have been asked every possible question imaginable over and over and over again. I suppose the question, it's not a single question. I think the question that politicians don't get asked enough is, how did it feel in that moment? How did it feel to make that decision? And I suppose the closest I got to being asked some of that was in the early days of COVID, when I did a few interviews and people would say, how does it feel to take these big decisions? But I sometimes think we under-examine the kind of psychological and emotional impact of leadership.
Yeah.
And that we might actually understand a lot more about politics and governance and political decision making if we actually thought about the kind of character and personality and emotional intelligence, or lack thereof, in the part of some politicians, that are at play in all of that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's a great answer, thank you. I know this is going to be a no, but are you going to don any sparkles soon, or will we see you in the jungle?
You will definitely not see me in the jungle. I just couldn't do that. I'm too squeamish, and I'm too much of a picky eater as well. But and no, I'm not. That's not really what I see myself doing. I mean, I'm a great believer in life of never saying never to things, because you only get to live once, and I think I believe this more the older I get. You should always leave your mind open to different opportunities. But I think I can come as close on this as I can on anything to saying emphatically, nah, not for me.
Thank you so much.
Not at all.
And it is now to the people of Scotland, all of you, whether you voted for me or not, that I reserve my final words from this seat. Thank you so much for placing your trust in me. Words will never adequately convey the gratitude and the awe I hold in my heart for the opportunity I have had to serve as your First Minister. It truly has been the privilege of my lifetime. And with these words, Presiding Officer, I draw it to a close.